In an interview with the Associated Press, former Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and now Ukraine's ambassador to the United Kingdom, Valerii Zaluzhnyi, stated that the 2023 counteroffensive plan was not properly implemented because President Volodymyr Zelensky and other officials did not allocate the necessary resources. At the same time, in 2024, Zelensky himself stated that the plans for Ukraine's counter-offensive actions in the fall of 2023 were already on the Kremlin's desk, even before the counter-offensive began. Zaluzhnyi says that the counter-offensive plan he prepared with the participation of NATO partners failed because President Zelensky and other officials did not provide him with the necessary resources. According to Zaluzhnyi, the initial plan was to concentrate the troops into a single force in order to liberate part of the Zaporizhzhia region, where the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is located, and then advance south toward the Sea of Azov. This, he said, was supposed to cut the land corridor through which the Russian army supplies the temporarily occupied Crimea. Zaluzhnyi emphasized that success required a significant concentration of forces and tactical surprise. Instead, according to him, the troops were dispersed over a wide section of the front, which weakened their striking capabilities. As noted by the Associated Press, two Western defense officials, speaking on condition of anonymity, confirmed to journalists that the initial plan called for a more concentrated use of forces. Let us recall that back in September of last year, 2023, Valerii Zaluzhnyi wrote in an article for Zerkalo Tizhnya that the Ukrainian counter-offensive of 2023, when he was still leading the army, stalled due to insufficient forces and resources to create a decisive advantage at the breakthrough sector and the lack of mobile reserves. Zaluzhnyi also noted that since the autumn of 2022, the fighting had taken on a positional character and both sides had essentially reached a positional stalemate. As an example of an unsuccessful attempt at a sudden strike, he cited the operation in Russia's Kursk region, which, in his assessment, did not bring operational success to the Ukrainian forces. To break through such a front, the enemy needed to have a decisive advantage in forces and means, specifically at the breakthrough sector, as well as mobile reserves capable of quickly entering the created breach and advancing into operational space before the enemy's reserves could arrive for a counteroffensive or a new defensive line could be organized. Unfortunately, for both objective and subjective reasons, it was no longer possible to create such an advantage before the offensive itself. A deep rethinking of the results of the summer 2023 offensive was prompted not only by the reaction to the attempt to turn such a difficult element of war into a reality show, where at first our plans somehow ended up in Russia, and then the course of events was commented on online by all sorts of fortune tellers and prophets, who later ended up under sanctions or even on the wanted list. I still feel the pain of those failed plans. Nevertheless, the single most important thing was to learn from the lessons and immediately change our strategy, a strategy that would allow us to survive in an entirely new kind of warfare. Today, as I analyze those days and study my own materials, I keep coming back to the conclusion that, in fact, the armed forces of both Russia and Ukraine truly reached a positional deadlock, similar to what occurred during the First World War. In fact, since the fall of 2022, it was precisely on the Donetsk front that the fighting gradually took on a positional character. At the same time, according to Zaluzhnyi, the Russians are able to advance thanks to a tactic of attrition, under which maneuvers such as encirclement are hardly possible. Of course, actions like the Kursk operation, if they are justified primarily in terms of human losses with limited objectives, can be carried out. However, practice has shown that, in the end, an isolated tactical breakthrough on a narrow section of the front does not bring the necessary success to the attacking side. The defending troops managed to take advantage of both technological and tactical advantages, and over time not only prevented the tactical breakthrough from turning into an operational success, but later themselves carried out a tactical advance also without operational success. I do not know the cost of such actions, but it is obvious that it was too high. To summarize the above, at the core of the positional stalemate lies not only the impossibility of breaking through defensive lines, but most importantly, the inability to accomplish operational objectives, including gaining access to operational space, Zaluzhnyi concluded. And do you agree with the former commander-in-chief? Write your thoughts in the comments and we'll read them. That's all for now. Leave a like and see you next time.